So far I'm quite pleased with the new season of Star Trek Discovery. I probably would have liked it no matter how bad it was, but I actually think this premiere is way better than the first season premiere. In the first episode of the first season, it was hard for me to get a handle on Michael Burnham and what her motivations were. The first episode of the second season shows explicitly what Michael's motivations are. Perhaps it was a little too on the nose with the flashback that shows her rocky relationship with Spock, and it was counterintuitive that Spock would seem so resentful, but given that he's always had a rough relationship with Sarek, perhaps his reaction was an extension of that. Something that other folks have pointed out is that the schematic of the Enterprise on Discovery's computers doesn't exactly match what the Enterprise actually looks like on the show. The schematic is a lot more faithful to the original design. Maybe there's been a refit or something, and maybe there will be another refit to change it back to the way it looked in the original series. This episode was full of little Easter eggs and references. I know that references are kind of a cheap way to hook old school fans, but I still think it's a lot of fun to notice them. The first I noticed was when Captain Pike beamed aboard the Discovery and said, "Back in Mojave, I learned the best way to get into a cold stream is to jump right in." In the original series episode The Cage, there are a few scenes of Pike back home in Mojave. I like the way Anson Mount plays Pike, but he seems notably different from the way Pike was in the original series. Discovery's Pike seems much more perky and chipper than the older Pike. The older Pike almost resigned because of some folks who died under his command, and he was quite morose about it. I guess maybe his perspective changed because of his experiences on Talos 4 when he was imprisoned by the Talosians. Speaking of which, I hear that there will be Talosians on the show this season. I hope they have giant heads with throbbing veins like they did back in the 60s. I love that the Enterprise crew has the new uniforms that are actually the old uniforms. I know Pike ends up putting on an old uniform later in the episode, but hopefully in later seasons the Discovery crew will adopt the original series uniforms. I thought it was interesting that Pike said that the weird signals they had detected were spread out over 30,000 light years, when it actually looks like there are signals coming from every quadrant, which would probably be closer to 80 or 90,000 light years. Also, how long ago did they start being detected? Because even over subspace, receiving such signals would take years. The Saurian in the turbolift was goofy and pointless, even though I'm glad there's a Saurian on the show. Pike said that he was briefed on the classified details about Lorca. I'm glad that he noted that the mirror universe stuff is classified. That would explain why Kirk and Spock seemed to know nothing about the mirror universe when Kirk was switched with his evil counterpart. I'm glad that Dr. Culber is still on the show, but I hope he's in more than just flashbacks and recordings. When the crew was about to fly their jetpacks to the asteroid, Pike told his engineer to get her red shirt into an EV suit. I thought that was some nice misdirection. You'd think she was gonna die, but she doesn't die, at least not in this episode. Tilly asks for a sample of the asteroid because apparently it, or maybe whatever it is that is causing the signals that they're looking for, is causing the mycelial network to go all crazy. I wonder if maybe the signals have something to do with why we never end up hearing about the network again in any other Star Trek series. Tig Notaro is pretty cool. I suspect that she'll probably replace Stamets as engineer on the Discovery since he's leaving. I can't imagine he'll be gone permanently, but I figure they need to get him off the ship so they have an excuse not to use the spore drive. I think that's probably what the writers had in mind. Another neat Easter egg was when Pike found one of Lorca's fortune cookie strips that said, "Not every cage is a prison," which is some nice foreshadowing to when he'll eventually realize that when he returns to Talos 4. I thought it was weird that he complained that there were no chairs in the ready room, given that on the Constitution-class Enterprise there's no ready room at all. I wonder if we're going to see Pike get irradiated. That might be pretty cool. I was disappointed that number 1 wasn't on this episode, but hopefully she'll be there next week. I'm looking forward to seeing how she plays the character. I can't see her playing her quite the way Majel Barrett did. So far I think this season is off to a great start.